What's going on, Facebook? Welcome to the first ever daytime episode of the Late Night Show with Dr. Kojo. I have a very special guest and a good friend of mine here on the stream today, and we're going to be talking about ADHD and being diagnosed late in life. This is a very special episode because obviously I can relate to it, but I know so many of you all have left comments talking about, I just got checked out, I just got diagnosed, I just got, treatment is life changing. So I want to talk about it today. And before I bring in the guests, you already know what to do. Go ahead, let me know where you all are checking in from. As y'all know, I'm live from Los Angeles, California. But let me know where y'all checking in from, and let's get into it. Chris, what's going on, Edmonton? Andy just turned 43 and was just diagnosed. Wow. Okay. I'd love to hear the stories. Montgomery, Alabama in the house. So we have somebody from Canada, somebody from Alabama. Tamara, what's up? Cincinnati, Ohio. Good luck to your team in the Super Bowl. Arizona, Washington, Southern Utah, Greensboro, Augusta, Georgia, Kansas City, Atlanta, Tucson, Arizona. Our special guest is from Arizona as well. And with that being said, let's go ahead and transition and give him a chance to introduce himself. This is a content creator with over 100,000 subscribers on TikTok and also a dear friend of mine. I would like for you all to welcome Mr. P-Town Groovy into the stream today. P-Town, what's going on?
P-Town?
P-Town.
What it do, man? How you doing, Kojo? How's life?
I'm good. I'm so happy to have you all here. And it's dope because like your actual friend, and we can connect on the ADHD piece, and right. We can just talk and be transparent and vulnerable. And I was diagnosed when I was like 25 or so. And like I knew it growing up, and like after an event in 7th grade where this baseball player talked about his ADHD diagnosis and what it looked like for him, I was like, I know I have that, but I was too ashamed to tell my parents because they were struggling to put food on the table. So I was like, I'm not gonna bother them with complaints that I can't focus, because I didn't know the impact that it could have in your life. So I got diagnosed, and I got to the profession helping out people, advocating, and I look for people just like you who have a similar story. So before we get into your story, can you introduce yourself and who you are, and a little bit about why you post online?
Man, okay, so my name is Chris. I go by P-Town Groovy on all my social media platforms. I just go by Groovy usually. I am a content creator from Peoria, Arizona. That's my city. That's what I rep all the time. I am a person that just loves to post content about health, wealth, love, happiness, and also knowledge, and positive content that's going to help people get through their day. I know a lot of times we go through struggles of mental health or different things that happen that make our life a little bit more difficult. If I can be a person that advocates for people having a better life, then my mission is accomplished. So why I post content is just for that reason. I post that content just so I can help people have a better day and the most interesting and funny and entertaining day than they can have.
That's fantastic. I love that. And obviously we connected through social media. And yesterday's show, we were talking about if social media is toxic or not. And I brought both sides, but obviously, it allowed us to become friends. And it's funny how, God works and how things just come together. Even if you're not a believer, sometimes I still believe that things work together for to help us out. And we've connected, and you were recently diagnosed with ADHD, and you've talked a little bit about it on social media. Can you take us through your ADHD journey and how you felt when you first got diagnosed? And I want to break it up into parts because I do want to get to know your childhood, and like I've explained to people on here that the symptoms should have been present before the age of 12, but as we know, not everybody gets a chance to get help, whether it's lack of money, lack of resources, the stigma, right? Stigma. Right, it's pretty heavy. So talk about getting diagnosed first, and we'll get into your childhood a little bit later.
So me getting diagnosed, the entire journey was this. I remember the reason I wanted to get diagnosed was because I kept seeing Kojo talk about ADHD online. And then Kojo actually came out to Arizona. and we were talking about it. And I said, "Hey, man, what's ADHD like for you? Like, what are some symptoms you experience? Like, what's some things that go through your mind? All this." And I remember the thing he said. He's like Mickey Ficky, and he went through his entire list of things that had.
I mean,
Yeah, went through your entire list of just things that you experience on a daily basis and how your mind works and stuff. And I was kind of sitting there just like puzzled because I was like, wow, that sounds oddly familiar. And the reason it
uh,
sounded oddly familiar was because I was thinking about myself. And I kept telling myself, trying to back out of it because I was like, nah, there's no reason to go to the therapist and get diagnosed with it. There's no reason um to do it. I've lived this long with it. I know if I have it, cool. If
right.
I have it, cool. You know, but then I started to think about some things that are very important to me. One, my education. And I was thinking about, okay, if I do have this diagnosis, how can I work through it in order to be successful? For one, pardon me, I'm sorry. And then that's for one. And then for two, I was thinking about me wanting to be a father and also a husband as well. And how is this going to affect the lives of my kids, or how is it going to affect the lives of my wife, and how can she help me with this as well? So then I was like, it came to a point where I was like, it's really been on my mind for a while. I feel like it's the right thing to do. So let me hit up Kojo and ask him about how to go about this, getting diagnosed and things of that nature. So I texted Kojo. I was like, "Hey, Kojo, how'd you get diagnosed with ADHD?" And he texted me a good recommendation for a psychiatrist here in Arizona. If I can say his name, it's Dr. Dunatop. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Um, really
Awesome
great.
guy.
Yeah, awesome guy. Very hospitable, very very intelligent, and also willing to sit down and listen. And that's the biggest thing I think we need nowadays as well, is someone just to sit there and listen. So during the consult and everything, do you want me to go into how the consult went and all that?
Sure. If you don't mind, wherever you're comfortable with, because this is live and like there's a playback, but wherever you're comfortable with, we can help provide some insight for some people.
Yeah. So during the consult, went in and Dr. Chandradov, he sat me down and he said, okay, I know this is more ADHD based, but let's start from the beginning because we're going to be working together. And I said, all right, I'm down. He said, tell me about your life. Tell me about, what's going on. Can you just start from the beginning? And I said, okay, wow. Like I've never had someone ask me from the beginning of my life, how it is and this and that. So I said, I quoted the Bible and I said, in the beginning, no, I'm kidding. I said, I was like, okay, and then I was just like, all right, so this is how my life started out. I told them about my school, especially, and how my mom and my dad had actually had thought that I had ADHD, but they never got me tested, and also
Mm,
how I was at school. I was not a good student in school. I wanted to be a good student. I remember, in my high school days, I wanted to focus and buckle down and really get into the work because I knew it was going to get me somewhere someday. Um, but then I just remembered not being able to focus and not really caring and not being able to get jump started on the work and will myself to do it. I am a person of strong ambition, and I'm a person that I believe that hard work and hard work is the uh, is the algorithm to success. But I remember just not being able to will myself to do it, to be able to focus and stuff like that. And
yeah.
while I did care about my mind did care about what I was doing, my brain was just not with it. And I remember telling Dr. Dunatov about this, and he was, going along with me and asking me certain kind of questions. For example, how did you feel this part in this part of your life? And he asked me again how I did during school and things of that nature. And like I said, I didn't do the best in school. And he came to a conclusion. And this is actually one of the biggest reasons I actually got. I knew it was ADHD because over the last year, it's actually gotten worse. And by worse, meaning that I told Dr. Dunatov, I said, at work, I'm fidgety. I get up and sit down after every single task that I do. I have a list of tasks I have to do. I get up after every single one. I got to go constantly to the kitchen, drink water. I'm daydreaming a lot, and I'm talking vivid daydreaming a lot. And yeah, you know about that, Coach.
Right.
Daydreaming a lot.
Yeah.
And I told him it's becoming almost like in a way, it's kind of an issue at my job. And so we got to the final conclusion. He was just like, he's like, yeah, so it was definitely ADHD. He was very, yeah, it sounds like ADHD, Chris. And I'm just like, huh, go figure. So finally got diagnosed with it officially. And then I asked Dr. Dunatov about some tips and some things I should be doing as far as diet, because I know ADHD and diet is a very important thing. And he gave me some tips for school, life, and then just how to manage my diet and things of that nature, and how to be a more successful person for myself with the diagnosis of ADHD.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for, talking about that. And
Mhm.
I like a lot of things that you're saying, it leads me to this question. People always ask me on social media, like, is it wrong to self-diagnose? Like, are like, and when I post these videos, they'll say you're making kids self-diagnose. And I think the ability to get a diagnosis is a privilege, right? Not everybody, and it's a complicated, like, if you don't know, right now we're friends, like we're homies, so like you can just text me and like I can say to Dr. Devin, right? But the average person who's sitting there home who is frustrated, like I was in seventh grade, and of course we didn't have social media back then like this, but the average person who's sitting there and they're frustrated and they don't know where to go, they will watch a TikTok and then they'll identify with it and they'll say, damn, I feel like I do these types of things.
Mhm.
And, when you go, like you said, you go see a professional, a psychiatrist, they're going to ask you about your symptoms. So it's good to know, to have insight into it. So I when it comes to the self-diagnosis thing, I'm like, oh, sure. Think about all of the things that you have
Mhm.
and how it's affecting you. And you could possibly have it. Just go to a professional and confirm that diagnosis. But I'm so happy that you went, and it's also like the part that I can't control with the people who are watching, the almost 400 people who are watching live from Facebook, and the probably like 10,000 people who will watch um you know within the next 24 hours. The part you can't control is like finding a good provider, and people are
Mhm.
always DMing me like, how do you find a good doctor? And I don't know the answer to that. Of course I can, shout out Dr. Devin in Arizona, but what about people who are not in Arizona? For the people in Cleveland or Idaho, or it's pretty
Yeah.
difficult, because one thing that you said that I liked, you said that he listened to you. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
when he listened to you, talk about the how you felt, and it almost sounds like I'm questioning you like a therapist, but I'm asking this question because we know with ADHD, the emotional dysregulation, sometimes how your mood is up and down, and when rejection comes, you sometimes feel like you want to shut down. So I think
Yes.
it's helpful to have people who just listen. You don't have to solve the problem, but you have to listen. But tell me about him listening to you, and at what point did you feel like you were comfortable to, like, talk about your childhood and how you feel like ADHD was setting you back at work?
Mm. That's it's funny that you mentioned about the listening part, because I believe in life, what's really important is being able to listen to each other. We're all human beings. We all deserve an ear, and we all deserve some tender love and care as well. Dr. Dunatov, when we were talking about my diagnosis, he said that start from the beginning. Let me know about your life. He said we're going to be working together. Those things let me know that I was in a safe place, and let me know that I had the floor to talk about who I was, why I think I have this diagnosis, and also to get some help as well. And the thing about Dr. Dunantov is that he was just quiet the entire time that I wanted to speak. And oftentimes I had,
Mm.
sometimes with ADHD, sometimes we interrupt each other on accident because we have that thought. And he
Right.
just was like, he knew, he was just like, and I was like, oh, I apologize. And he's just like, no, no, go ahead, go ahead. He gave me the floor to speak and be open with who I am. And it made me feel comfortable, because it made me feel like there was no judgmental eye. And also it made me feel like he was there to help me, especially when he said, we're going to be working together. And in order to work together, he's got to get to know everything about me, because this is a professional that wants to help me with my issues and wants to provide a solution. And you can't do that if you don't know what's going on with the person that you're interviewing in a psychological interview, or in the interview process.
Right.
So that was something that he did, and that's something that made me feel good, and it made me feel like he actually cared, instead of maybe trying to get some cash, or just trying to go like, oh yeah, kid, you'll be all right, whatever it may be. Because a lot of times in life, and Kojo, I'm pretty sure you can attest to this, you have
Mhm.
people that when they look at ADHD, or they look at other diagnoses such as maybe bipolar disorder or depression and things of that nature, they'll say, oh, you're faking it. They don't really want to listen. They don't want to give you a chance to understand, or even give you an ear. And it's kind of frustrating. But when you get in front of a physician that wants to lend his ear to you and wants to actually help you, it makes the process go a lot smoother. Your anxiety level is down. And also you feel like you've got something accomplished as well.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny because I remember when I was working back at the psychiatric hospital, and it's not just one psych hospital, this is just back like the three that I've worked in, the patients would like talk amongst themselves, and I would hear them, and they would point out like which doctors and which nurses like actually came to work and enjoy the job. Like they would say, "Oh, so and so just mailing it in," and you can tell when somebody's just there to be like, "All right, yeah, we need take this," and
Mhm.
having somebody who listens is so comforting. And I'm happy that we're talking about this because when you talk about a mental health professional in general, specifically psychiatrists, I don't think they have a good name out there because people think of, oh, they're gonna take my money, they're gonna do this, or a therapist is gonna charge me whatever amount of money, and the moment that time is up, they're like, oh, I gotta go. And of course, like we know that you have an hour for therapy session or whatever is allotted at that time, but a good provider, a good clinician is going to want to hear you out and give you that safe space, because otherwise you can't really talk about what's going on, and
Facts.
then you can't really arrive at the right diagnosis. So I like the fact that you said that. Now I want to talk about some of the childhood frustrations that you had, because there's a lot of parents here who either know some of these things in their kids, and or maybe some kids watching, right? And
Mhm.
of course, people know that this is not professional advice, but like from your perspective, what kinds of things did you feel like you were struggling with as a kid, that you think is because of your ADHD?
Okay, a very very good question. And the biggest thing I could say was my focus. My focus was not there on outwardly, but on the internal, it was my. I come from a home of I saw my dad work very very hard in order to get to where he is today, and
Mm,
he always inspired me. But with my drive to be a great student, it wasn't, my mind and my brain was not connecting, and the frustration that I had was that I couldn't will myself to get focused and get in my academics and get my head in the books and get ready and stuff. My brothers, both in grade school, I remember my dad vividly telling me, he's like, your brothers have this grade point average. Why do you got, why is your point average so low? And I just remember the only answer I can give him was that I'm just not like them. And the truth of the matter is that I wasn't like them. And the biggest frustration was not being able to will myself to get jump started on something that I knew was very important at a young age, especially. And then also, I was a very talkative person. I am now, but I was very, very, very talkative when I was a kid. And I love to talk to my neighbors. I love to make people laugh. I wouldn't say necessarily I was a class clown, but I just was a very talkative student. And my teachers would sometimes have to be like, Chris, like you a good kid, but the talking is too much. And it was just me and my hyperactivity. It's just me getting that adrenaline dump or getting that dopamine rush, and me wanting to be active and be outside and be charismatic and be a kid. But a lot of parents will look at that and just, especially with kids who have focus issues and ADHD issue or adrenaline dump issues or hyperactivity issues. I'm sorry. They
mhm.
would look at that and say like, oh, they're just being a kid. They would look at that and say, oh, he's just not focusing because he doesn't want to. And the frustration was that with that on my end was that sometimes I would really, really want to and really try, but I couldn't will myself to do it. So the
Mm.
frustration was fighting against my own brain. And actually now, since I'm in college, I still have that issue as well. So its frustrations are still there. I just know how to manage it. And this is something we were talking about yesterday. You learn as you get older how to manage your mood and how to manage yourself as a man or a young lady, whatever it may be. But my biggest frustration was not being able to will myself to focus, and also wanting to be a super active, allow my dopamine and my adrenaline to go crazy and run wild, whatever. But I wasn't able at times to do that in certain social spaces.
That's awesome, and we're gonna talk a little bit about how things are for you now as an adult, especially as a college student. I do want to address this question by Melissa, but this thank you so much for sharing all of that. You've put the your childhood story together, and like I said, we're gonna talk about how you are now. And one thing I just thought of, you said that you feel like your ADHD got worse in the past year or so,
Mhm.
and for a lot of adults, they never really go to get checked out until like you're met with a stressor, because it's like, especially women who have to wait years to get diagnosed if it's not caught in those formative years, right? So
Mhm.
it's like you fell through the cracks and that you just kept living your life, right? You were late to everything, you had a hard time keeping a job, like struggling in silence, right? And then all of a sudden, like you see these videos or you hear people talk about, oh, I do this and that, and I feel so much better. And then you start to tell yourself, like, wow, like I think there's something going on here, and if I get the help, it could really take me to that next level, right? Uh,
Mm,
but sometimes you don't have that catalyst to get you to get the help until you're met with such a significant stressor. Everybody has a breaking point,
mhm.
and the pandemic was a breaking point for a lot of people. That's why I think a lot of people are being diagnosed now. And even like you're a college student, right? And you're diagnosed at your age, and I was diagnosed in grad school. So it's like as an adult, because we don't talk about it, you're like, all right, I'm just gonna kind of push through and I'm gonna be all right. But then it's like you get that stressor and you reach your breaking point.
Yeah.
And at some point you're like, man, like this ain't right. Like
Yeah.
this can't be, like there's gotta be more to this, and I
Mhm.
want to address Melissa's question right here. She says, I'm just joining, so I'm not sure if it was mentioned already, but what would be the best place to start looking for a diagnosis? A primary care doctor. I've heard different options. Right. So no, Chris, as you were saying, you went straight to a psychiatrist, right?
Mhm.
And I think for because not everybody can do that, right? But if you can go straight to a specialist, right? Psychiatrist, psychiatric nurse practitioner, psychiatric physician assistant, if you can go straight to somebody who's a specialist,
Mhm.
that would be probably preferable, right? But there's a mental health shortage, right? And we don't have enough mental health clinicians all across the board. Every type of
Unfortunately.
psychotherapist, there's a shortage with them. So
Mhm.
if the primary care provider is your most linear path to getting help, I would probably recommend that to the everyday person who has like a PCP that they can check in with. Let them
Mhm.
know I've been having issues with focusing, or I'm having issues with this and that. And I've always thought that it was an issue, or I've always thought that it was ADHD, but I never, and I was embarrassed to talk about it, or I was, but a PCP is a fantastic starting point. And a lot of primary care providers are comfortable with mental health conditions like ADHD, depression, anxiety, and more. And if they're not comfortable, then they'll most likely refer you out to a specialist like a Dr. Devin who you
Mhm.
saw. So I didn't want to highlight Melissa's question because I know that will bring a
I'm
lot
gonna
of
add to
value
that.
to people. Oh, go ahead.
To add to Melissa's question, I know we talked about a little bit about self-diagnosing.
Right.
If what's great about the social media space and videos that I do with ADHD or just mental health, whatever it may be, and the fantastic videos that Dr. Kojo does, is that when we look at these videos and we get some kind of entertainment from it because of relatability, it kind of starts to make you think, huh, that sounds a lot like me. And then you start to think, wait, do I have this? So maybe self-diagnosing isn't the way, but maybe that's the start to your research into,
Yeah.
is this what I have? So from, I would say, just not from a non-clinical perspective, because I'm not a doctor. Kojo, please correct me if I'm wrong. But what I did before I went into the psych eval and before I really texted Kojo, I did a lot of research and thought to myself, okay, let me look at my symptoms. Let me connect it with other people who have these things like Kojo, and let me delve a little deeper into what ADHD is and why it is the way it is and all these different things. So self-diagnosis is not the way, but the research behind it before you go, okay, this sounds like something I have, is really helpful for yourself and also for the doctor you're going to see, saying, hey, I did a little research myself. I saw this symptom, I saw this symptom, I saw this symptom. These things look pretty consistent with who I am. I would like to get tested for this diagnosis.
Right. No, I think it's fantastic, and people identify with certain conditions or disorders based off of how their life is and what that person is saying online, right? So, provided you're following, somebody who, like a doctor or someone like me, or if you can Google the person to make sure that they're legitimate, or if you see a blue check and you can verify that they're verified, that's
Mhm.
helpful. But there's nothing wrong with identifying with the condition, provided that you find some way, if possible, to back it up with a professional's opinion of what you're going through. So I like that, and I think to be a to be someone like me, and just to tell people who are watching, like, oh, don't self-diagnose, and if I just walk away, it's almost like you're gaslighting the person and telling them,
Yes.
oh, you're fine, don't self-diagnose, and they're like, no, something is going on here. I know something is going on because, like, I know that they shouldn't be like this, So
Mhm.
I think it's okay for people to identify with a certain thing, provided that they get, the necessary help. And that leads me to, the former point, right? So now that you're a college student and you're working, and you're doing your thing, how does it impact you? ADHD, and what kinds of things do you do to keep your self-esteem intact? And I want to harp on self-esteem because sometimes we just have those days where, like today's example, like this is a very important live, and I really like. I'm going to share this one after the fact. Everything is all my lives are kept and shared, but I'm going to share
Mhm.
this as a post because I really want people to watch this one. Because like if you're lurking on my page and you can watch this, 30-minute live, and get so much information from it, then it might reach the person who needs to see it. So what, how does it affect you in your current life, and what do you do for your self esteem?
Hmm. That's a very good question. Because a lot of people, it's funny. A lot of people know what's wrong with them, but they don't know. They know what's wrong with them, but they never do anything to help themselves. So when I got the official diagnosis for ADHD, after seeing all my issues in work and issues in just life in general, whether it be social spaces like conversations or texting, whatever it may be, I got the official diagnosis of ADHD, and I asked my doctor, "What can I do for myself to put myself in a better place?" I don't feel like with ADHD I'm quote unquote or necessarily behind, but I do feel like the ADHD is something where it maybe holds you back a little bit. So I said,
Right.
what can I do to doc? What can I do to get ahead? So the best thing he said was that he said nutrition, and this is something I really started to focus on and hone in on as well. Your meals, you need to make sure that those plates that they used to give you in school, where it was like you need to have grain, veggies, and protein, whatever it may be, stuff like that's very important. My doctor told me specifically, he said 3 meals a day and then 2 snacks as well. And those 2 snacks could be a protein shake, it could be yogurt, whatever it may be. I really started to hone down on my nutrition. I'm already an athlete and I already work out a lot. But when he told me about that and how that can help my mind get more focused or even jumpstart or put myself already ahead of my studying schedule, whatever it may be, I knew I really had to hone down on my nutrition even more than I already did. That was for one. Number two, how it affects me now today with school. And this is something that was very wasn't apparent to me until about 2 weeks ago, till today. During school, with not being when I was in grade school and high school, not being so good at school, I always remember to myself that I don't know how to focus and I'm too hyper, but I get to college now and it's an issue because I don't know how to be a good student. And I think a lot of times in the school system, unfortunately, we don't teach children how to study. So me,
Mm.
25 years old, I'm getting now into college, going on this long journey that Kojo and I have discussed before a long time. Going on this long journey, you got to learn how to study. With ADHD, you're already fighting against yourself and not being a good student and not knowing how to study. That's already another struggle in itself. So what I've done for myself is I've contacted my teacher and I said, "Hey, sir, he used to be a school psychologist actually, which is very great, amazing.
Oh wow.
And also, having Kojo as a resource is awesome. I got down with my teacher. I said, "Hey, you used to be a school psychologist. What are some things you told students to do with ADHD and their college tips and or their study tips, whatever it may be?" And he was saying, different methods. He was going with me through the study guide. He was talking to me about how I can be a better the study techniques. He was giving me the blanket. Here are these study techniques that I've seen been successful in my years and years of being a school psychologist. Now it's up to me to adapt those techniques to my mind and see what works for me and also what works for my ADHD as well. And I've noticed that times I've figured out little hacks on my brain. And the biggest thing as well, the biggest hack I have is this: taking breaks. We live in a society where people say,
I don't want to cut you off and let my ADHD be on full display, but when somebody says something that's super amazing on my show, I give them a love of the show. I have to do my yell, so I love the show for you. Taking breaks is important. Yeah, okay, I'll let you elaborate. I'm sorry.
so the biggest hack I've figured out with ADHD minds is take a break. You have to take a break. Your mind is already depleted in its reward system, which is dopamine. I think a lot of people know that term now, or serotonin, or know what the neuromodulators are. The
Right.
biggest thing is that with the ADHD mind, we sometimes don't get focused because our brain is like, we don't want to do this. Getting that extra bit of 10, 15-minute breaks in between study session, using the Pomodoro effect, these things are effective techniques that are going to help your mind get ready to start another session, another studying session. And also something, Kojo, you told me as well, and this is something that is something it's hard, but it's very true. You got to put in the extra work. As a student, you're going to have to put in the extra work. If the mind with the mind of ADHD, unfortunately, we are quote unquote in a way behind. But how we're going to get ahead and how we're going to persevere and how we're going to power through this is taking breaks, but sometimes we have to pull all-nighters. Taking breaks, but sometimes we got to do the extra flashcards a little bit more to get it into our long-term memory. Taking breaks, but sometimes we got to sit there a little bit longer and ask a little bit more detailed questions because sometimes our brain don't compute what's going on. Sometimes the textbooks are too dense. Sometimes the information is too much. So taking breaks, but putting in the extra work. A lot of students in college, and this I can really say for myself, I have the will, the tenacity, the drive, the fire to be a successful student, to persevere and get my degree in psychology. I have the drive, the fire. But my thing is, now that I have that drive and fire, how can I use that with the techniques of taking breaks, eating right, whatever it may be, to combine those all together to work through ADHD? And a lot of times, what's a big problem is that people try to fight against their ADHD. They try to fight against what they already have.
Mm-hmm.
In life, not to get philosophical, but in life, we have
Let's hear it.
in life, we have challenges. We all have our specific challenges. If it's a mental health disorder such as depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, ADD, whatever it may be, we all have a struggle. The worst thing we can do for ourselves is fight against what we have. We have to work on a way to go through it and work with it as well. I feel like at times with ADHD, I feel like I'm a child inside at times in the way that I think sometimes, or sometimes the way that I do certain things, or some of the conversations I have, or the way my mind is, I feel like I'm a kid. So I work with my kid. I work with my inner child. I hold his hand and I say, okay, I know you want to, hyper focus on planting a garden this week, but at the same time, I'm going to guide you, kid, with a break or with a nutrition and stuff to get your mind focused back on the goal in front of us, which is getting this degree in psychology. And also something Kojo has told me as well is, one, don't be outcome based, and two, take it day by day.
Yeah.
I am very, very hard on myself. Kojo, you know this very full and well. I'm very hard on myself.
Gotta give yourself some grace.
Yes, you have to give yourself some grace. And also, you have to take it day by day. Take it day by day. You can't get so focused on the end goal that you lose sight of what's right in front of you right now. The struggle, the problem, or the good or the bad that's in front of you right there. You have to take it day by day, chunk sized. Take those breaks and just realizing that, okay, today is February, whatever it is, at whatever time, and I'm here right now in this present moment, is going to help you eat the bigger chunks later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And my grandma, she used to sing this song. When we were kids, one day at a time, sweet. You know,
Awesome,
but
brother.
yeah, we have to take it a day at a time. And like as I try to explain to the people on my platform, ADHD, you can break it down to, it's because people are like, oh, this person has a hard time paying attention, blah blah blah. You can pay attention, but you might not pay attention to the thing that you have to pay attention to at that time. You have trouble regulating your attention, so it's going to be hard to shift from one task to the next. So taking breaks and then come back and finishing that thing can be helpful, because you finish one big thing, but if you burnt yourself out, you might be done for the day. You might be shut down at 11 a.m. and no longer have any more desire. You might take a nap at noon and you're just kind of done. You eat lunch, you have no more desire to do anything. You have to be able to conserve your energy, take breaks, right? And give yourself grace. Do one thing at a time. You finish it. All right, I've done this. Then you move on to the next thing. And then, like, I've actually seen a study with people with ADHD, people who don't have it. Like, there's a delay, like getting from one task to the next for the people with ADHD. So I love that. Being mindful of that, taking breaks. Somebody asked about food earlier. Cutting out processed foods or reducing as best as you can. Of course, medications can be a game changer for a lot of people, but sometimes they can have side effects. your self-esteem, the way you talk to yourself, the people you keep around in your ecosystem. If you have people who are picking you up when you feel down, that could just sink you into like a depression. Because with ADHD, I believe that you're more likely to be depressed, right? You're more likely to be, a victim of bullying because you already don't think highly of yourself. So when somebody comes and they're like, "Oh, you suck," then you believe it, you internalize it. So doing those things can be helpful. Getting enough sleep can
Mhm.
be helpful too. Because if your brain is racing, you have all these race thoughts, and you can't pause.
Mhm.
We know that the lack of sleep is a big deal. And a lot of times with patients, when we're trying to put their life back on track, I start with the simple things like, are you eating? Are you sleeping? Who's your support system? And the basics will help you out. And also the last thing I want to mention, routine. Having
Mhm.
a routine that you can do, like a simple routine that you can give yourself credit for. Like in my morning routine, I include taking the dog out to pee because I have to do that anyway. So why not
Mhm.
put down my routine? Let me get credit for it, and then I can check off the box, get the little dopamine hit from taking Zoe out to go pee, and then she
Yeah, yeah.
cracks back, she's peeing, and she's looking at like this. So those are some practical things, and you've been on for a while. I'm so thankful for your time. But before you get out of here, can you let people know where they can find you online, and if you have any closing remarks, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, 100%. So you can find me on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube at P Town Groovy. Again, that's P Town Groovy, PTOWNGROOVY. All the social media platforms, Twitter, even too, I'm there as well. And parting words, I would say is, recently I was going through a really big struggle in life as far as just dealing with a lot of different things, ADHD diagnosis, um, dealing with depression from a very young age as well. That lasted for a very long time. And thanks be to God that I went through those things with him because I was struggling with him. And I also want to say that the biggest thing I learned from that is this: don't give up. Don't ever give up. And I know it's a lot of people say, I know a lot of the social media influencers come out and say these things, and I know a lot of the celebrities that you see on Instagram or and the IG models, and this guy and that guy, this guy looks like I have perfect life. They always say, just don't give up, just don't give up, and you never watch them go through the struggle. Right now, reading Kodo's book, or maybe even watching me on my YouTube channel, whatever it may be, you get to see us go through the struggle. And I can promise you, I've been through like a lot of struggles in my life. One of the biggest ones is running away from God, and how I was able to come back and turn to Him. So all praise and be to Him, and thanks for Him for keeping me in this life. For one, and for two, I would say that through that entire time of struggle, through that entire time of suffering, I kept telling myself, I refuse to give up on myself. I refuse to give up on myself. You have to get to a point where you get so low where you say, I'm not going to give up on myself. So whether you have ADHD, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, you have your parents telling you this, your friends and peers telling you that, you're not in a good social space, you're not in a headspace, you have a terminal diagnosis, whatever it may be, you have to tell yourself, I refuse to give up on myself. I refuse to give up on myself, because God never gives up on you, and you can't give up on you at all. Because if you give up on you, everybody else is going to give up on you too. So you can, and you have to refuse to give up on yourself. That's my parting words to you guys. Anybody going through anything, just don't give up on yourself ever.
I love that. That's fantastic. And also, just coming from a guy, we don't talk about these things in our space as males. So being transparent with your struggles and telling people to not give up, because right
Mhm.
now, like over 200 people are watching, and we all feel like good, but sometimes you're gonna go back to sleep at night, or you might, after your friends leave or whatever on the weekends, you start to struggle by yourself, and then sometimes you tell yourself people don't care, and sometimes the negative thoughts start to overwhelm you. So having that commitment to fighting, at least one more day, fight, keep fighting, keep going.
Day by
um
day.
right, right, one day at a time, right? So
Mhm.
this thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you as a content creator, as a friend. I mean, you're like a brother at this point. Like I'm sure you'll come back to the crib here in LA
Hey,
at some
you know
point.
it.
Yeah, like we need you here to collab and just to hang out and just to kick it. So I
100%.
appreciate you. I love you, bro. Keep pushing, keep putting that message out there. And thank you so much for joining me today, and everybody who's watched. Thank you for watching. And if you're watching the playback, I'd love to know you all's comments and feedback on this.
Kojo Marilla, I love you very much. I appreciate everything you've done for me. You're a fantastic man of God, and also somebody that has helped me so much in my journey of life and just mental health as well. And I only look forward to seeing you more break ground in social media, break ground in the world of mental health, and succeed more for yourself as well.
Appreciate you, my guy. Hey, it's all love, bro. Thank you
And
so
I'll come
much.
back to the crib pretty soon too.
Oh yeah, hey, bro. Thanks me, bro. You know it.
Yeah.
All right,
brother.
take care, man. All right.
Peace out.
P-Town. Y'all have a fantastic weekend. Y'all be easy.